I'm Susan Rickheimer, host of Boss of Me. Who says divine feminine energy has no place in successful entrepreneurship? And honestly, who cares? Here I share the stories of women who have inspired me with their bold, messy, and unapologetic conviction, straight from their own voices. It's actually been a while since we recorded this podcast, and I had just started to scroll for her Facebook profile to see how she described herself when I came across this post of Mehr's. She says, I'm Mehr, grief coach, mother, entrepreneur, seeker. I've known deep love and deep loss, and now I help others hold both. My journey is woven with tea-scented mornings, pages filled with healing words, flights to faraway lands, and quiet walks with nature as my witness. This space is where my grief meets grace, where feeling deeply is strength, where your healing gets to look like you. There's a picture of her, and surrounding it are the words mom, widowed and healing, founder of Grief Circle, jazz lover, nature and long walks, feeling deeply, living honestly, chai enthusiast, loves soulful convos and deep books, journaling, awesome cook, host of Grief Talk, holding space for grief, traveler, grief coach, guiding through loss. Please welcome Mehr to the podcast. I think this is really perfect, actually. So we got on a call. It is now 9:32 here. What time is it there?
7:32 p.m.
Oh yeah, 10 hours. Okay, 7:32 p.m.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to get on together for 35 minutes. Got on Zoom, couldn't hear each other. Got on Zoom again, tried to go live to Facebook. Didn't happen. Tried to back it up and go straight to Facebook. Meanwhile, my puppy jumped up onto my desk and spilled my coffee everywhere. Fortunately, I have a new computer that fortunately is elevated, so it just didn't really, it's fine. But I think it's really important because one of the reasons that I wanted to have this conversation with you is because of the work that you do with grief coaching. And so what I think this has done is just 100% put into perspective the little things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that, we've already in the very short time that we've physically known each other, we've talked about just life happening in the human experience. And so this is all of that. And eventually what PTSD, the trauma that you coach people, very blessed people through, is also the human experience.
Of course, it is. Absolutely.
So will you talk a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much, Susan, for having me here, in spite of all the obstacles that we just have been facing for the last couple of minutes, for the last half hour or so. But yeah, this had to happen. So I'm truly grateful to be here with you in this digital space and to be given an opportunity to talk about this. So first of all, thank you so much, Susan, for having me here.
Thank you.
So yeah, about me ending up as a grief coach. It all started 4 years ago when I lost my husband suddenly to an unexpected cardiac arrest, and he passed away on a day that is just like any other day. That was a very shocking experience for me and my 3 children. Nothing remained the same. During those days, it felt like, I don't know, I was suddenly living in this strange life that I found myself in. Like all of a sudden in that life, my husband was removed out of the equation. And after that, nothing was the same for me and my children. What followed was a series of a lot of emotions that empowered me, overwhelmed me. And those included grief, sadness, the sense of loss, pain, heartache, sometimes even guilt, sometimes even, I don't know, disappointment, sometimes even anger. And those were the times when, honestly, my thought process was also very hazy. It got all clouded by the grief and the emotional overwhelm I was going through, and I couldn't think straight. And yeah, those were the times.
The loss of identity. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
of
but in
course.
the
Yeah, yeah,
midst of
yeah. No,
all of that, right?
this is a very important point. Very important point. Like, one fine day I was this woman who had a husband and kids. I was married to him for 18 years. And, one fine day, just like that, everything just blows into the air. And you're left with literally nothing. Like, picking up the pieces of a life that once was. This is what that was about. This is what I felt. So this is
And you
just to
worked together,
yeah,
and it was during
yeah,
COVID.
yeah. It was during COVID also. So it was during that time. And as time went on, and, well, life has to happen. I had to look after my kids, I had to look after the work, and I had to kind of drag myself to be involved in the daily things and all that. So sometimes I used to feel that maybe I did not really have what would I say? I wouldn't use the word luxury, but maybe I would say maybe the chance or the opportunity to grieve the way I want to. Maybe this is what I felt sometimes, that maybe there should be more support, more emotional like avenues available where I could, go for support, and something that I know that it's there when I need some emotional support and I need compassion and I need someone to understand. So these were the things that I found missing. I found that there is very little emotional support. Well, the people around us, the relatives, the immediate family, even the extended family, the acquaintances, the friends, I'm sorry to say, if they haven't been through a similar loss, they don't even know what to say to you, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, they try their best, but sometimes the words that they say, the manner in which they try to comfort you, maybe I don't know. You need something else. You need it coming from someone who knows, someone
I
who has
think
been
that's
through similar.
I'm sorry. I think that's really important as well, that you can have a life that is supported
Yeah,
by people who truly had best interest at heart
yeah,
and who
yeah,
care, who also have feelings about what happened and the loss and
exactly.
what you are going through. And so they're also processing that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so I would say guilt because you know that they're going through something. I remember a friend of mine lost his father, and the woman who works with them, with the whole family, he came home after the funeral and she was sitting in their laundry room floor crying. And he told me later, he said, I am just got home from my father's funeral and I'm consoling her because she's so torn apart. And so people who not only, and again, the different stages of grief, right? But people who
yeah,
are at a place where they can use that experience to, or tap into that experience to support you, but
yeah.
also not be emotionally, they can remain unattached so that you can
Yeah,
get
yeah.
what you need.
Exactly. Because, Susan, from my experience, what I gather from those days when I recall now, two things really made me feel better. One, if I was talking to someone who had grief of their own, like in any form, the
Yeah.
words, well, if it was someone who had lost their husband, well, that was the best. I don't know
Mhm.
if this is the word to be used for these emotions or not.
The most relatable, the most
Yeah,
support.
yeah,
Most
that
support.
was the time when I felt myself connected. Okay, like this woman, she also lost her husband, and I also. So we were sitting and talking about the stuff. This was one thing, and another time I used to feel good if luckily I found someone who would just sit there and listen to me and not advise me on anything, not try to jump in giving me their own examples or irrelevant examples. So this was one other thing. If I was lucky enough to find a listener, which somehow somewhere I did once in a while, I did used to connect with someone on a certain level. So
Mhm.
these two things, they led me to this thing that maybe the people who go through grief, they need, well, to be honest, as much emotional support as there can be. So maybe if I can make a little difference, maybe if I can be there for someone just to make a little, like a slight difference in someone's life, make them feel better in like in the least possible way, that would be like amazing. So this was the idea that brought me into coaching. And I found that there are grief coaches, very few, but there are. And they're doing great work. And they're there for people who lose a spouse or a loved one, or sometimes parents, sometimes siblings, children. Yeah, of course. And as I started this journey, I kept on interacting with people. And then lately, I have come to the realization that I've had this beautiful interaction with a number of people. I was at a place where I was having this session. And this was the latest realization that I had, that grief comes in so many forms in everyone's life. And I believe everyone's grief needs to be included in whatever form it is. Because the thing is that more often than not, we don't talk about grief because we find it, as humans, we find it a difficult emotion. Like, I mean, why, if I don't know you, for instance, Susan, why should I come up and start talking about my grief with you? I would not. And even if I do know you, I would say, no, I'm meeting Susan after a while. So, maybe grief is not the best topic. I'll start with something else. So these are the things that stop all human beings from talking about grief because it's a difficult emotion to process, to express, to feel, to make ourselves connect with it, to recognize all these things. I have
Scary,
done.
right?
Yeah.
It's so
So,
scary. We're scared enough, or we've been programmed to be
yeah,
afraid. And
yeah,
so to actively talk about something, it's not just
yeah.
talk about, it's what you said, listening. And I think that's one of the things as a coach that was really drilled into me by my own coach was it's not about you. It's
Yeah,
not about you.
exactly.
And understanding that sounds very simple, but when
Mm.
you have an experience that relates, again, I think we're taught, or I believe that by talking about my experience, that's connecting us and that's building trust. And
Yeah,
the truth is that my experience just helps me listen more fully, used more deeply,
exactly.
if used in
Exactly.
that way.
Exactly. You're so right, Susan. It's these experiences that can make people who are grieving, it can make them connect on a different level, on a level on which they can't connect with every other person. So why not? I think that everyone who's grieving for just anything, they should have a chance to be able to connect with someone and to be able to talk about it and to be able to see how they can process it in a better way. So that's exactly the reason why I came in this field of grief coaching.
And in a
And
safe
yeah,
place, because that's
yeah,
also when
exactly.
you
In non-judgmental space.
and
Exactly.
one of the things that I just learned, my father lost his brother when his brother was 14 and he was 21. So we talk, the survivor guilt, right? And things that if I thought about it, I haven't thought about it in a very long time. And knowing that that's the place where he's coming from. And again, talking about compassion. And also, I think as somebody just walking around on the planet that look at you and I wouldn't look at you and wonder what loss you've had, right? And so, I mean, thank God today. And so I think that you're not going to be vulnerable, nor should you, to somebody that you don't know or somebody that you can't trust. But the importance of finding those people. And also, I would love for you to talk a little bit to speak to the evolution of where your practice is going, how your mission has, I don't know if it's grown or it's
Yeah.
expanded.
Yeah, definitely. Susan, the thing is that my mission, like right from the start, it was to provide support and guidance to people who are going through the complexities of loss and grief. That was the basic mission that I started with. And initially, I had widows like me in mind that, they need all the support, they need the most support, and they need to be listened to, they need to be helped, and someone should be there for them. So, this was the basic idea that I started with. But yeah, I've had sessions with them, I had sessions of compassionate listening, and there are certain techniques that I use, and all these things to help them navigate their journey with hope and resilience. And yeah, this is exactly the ground that I started with. But lately, I have realized that a few of my clients, the sessions that I've had with them, they were women who were divorced. The grief they were going through, I mean, it was so nice to be able to connect with them, to be able to comfort them in some way, to be able to make them feel better, or maybe even a slight difference in what they were going through, because they were
Perspective,
yeah,
other perspective.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand the loss of identity. I understand it might have been sudden, unexpected. You plan your life. Nobody, hopefully, goes
yeah,
into a marriage thinking this is going to end
exactly,
someday and
exactly.
I'm going to have to rediscover who I am.
Yesterday I was talking to someone, and when she asked me what I do in the group that I work with, she said something I wasn't really thinking about. She said, you should add pet grievers also in your work. And then she told me about her own pet. And then she told me how attached she was to them and what she felt after she lost them. And she said that there are so many people who find it so difficult to move on when they lose the pet that they love so much.
They're
So, like,
in the last week or so, the things that have come up regarding that, people who have suddenly lost pets. And I mean, it doesn't matter if you have children, it's a family member,
yeah,
you
of course,
count
of course.
on, and also that holds space for you usually,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And we actually are coming up on the 1 year anniversary of losing our dog suddenly. And
I'm
the
so
way
sorry.
that it all happened was traumatic for the whole family. It was sudden. And I've been thinking about that. And so I really appreciate the fact that you bring that up because, again, what I've learned, one of the probably the most important things that I've learned in this life that I'm living is about not comparing, is finding the similarities and
Exactly.
not the differences. And not that those, what you said, not that support of people who identify more closely
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
area, but it's separate. You can be compassionate to both, to all of it, and not compare this grief is worse than this.
Exactly. There you are. You said it rightly, Susan. This is exactly the case. Because, see, grief is an emotion that human beings have, well, have been facing through, I don't know, however long human beings have been on the earth. Yeah, this is one of those things that we've had and we've been dealing with it. And the pain is still real, the heaviness is still there, the burden is still there. So whatever form of grief you have, I mean, whatever the reason may be, you deserve to be connected with someone who probably understands, if not all of the thing, but maybe a little bit of it. So you deserve to be connected. And on the other hand, I think I need to get in touch with those people who need support, who are grieving, and maybe
Mhm.
try to be a little bit of comfort for them in any way, in any form, any emotional support that I can give them, because I have always felt, ever since I've been on this path of grief coaching, I felt that this is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. I feel that this is my calling. What I feel after connecting with these people, with the women I have worked with the people I have sessions with, that feeling it's priceless. What I feel after connect, because you know what, I also learn a lot of things when that session ends. I feel that in my grief journey, I have added something to that journey today because I had this session with this beautiful person told me, who opened up about their grief, and they let me in and they allowed me to make a difference. I don't know how big that difference was, but they allowed me in. They listened to me. I listened to them more. And in the process, I also learned a thing or two, a thing that definitely will add value to my healing and my grief journey also.
Well, and taking the focus off of yourself, we talked about
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
How, finding someone else to help, right? And truly
Exactly.
to support, to hold space. Will you talk a little bit about your practice, your process?
Yeah. So, Susan, I basically dedicate most of my time to listening to their story because I really believe in the power of listening. First, I listen, and then, if and how much they're willing to let me in, I go in according to that. And there are certain techniques that I offer, especially, yes, coming to, while we're having this conversation, coming to my favorite subject. I have recently come across the subject of positive psychology, which I use in the techniques that discuss with the people that I'm working with.
So
I
what is
love,
that? Will you
yeah,
talk about that a little bit for
yeah,
anyone who doesn't know?
exactly. Positive psychology, basically, I wouldn't say in comparison, that's a different subject. The conventional psychology has a totally different approach. Positive psychology is based on the principles that there is something positive to be looked at in everything. And there are certain principles, it's a full on subject, it's a recent one. And there are certain techniques and principles that they have developed, and they're pretty confident about them, the professors who have developed them. And I love all those techniques. They say that there is anything, like something positive can always be derived from a situation.
Mhm.
And that starts from you. First, you connect with your own positive characteristics, which we most often ignore.
Oh,
We
yeah.
are quick to jump about negative things about us. And we think about those also, but we never highlight. I mean, how many people I have seen who come and say, I'm a very kind person. No one says that, but there are very kind people. So this is just a little example. So negative psychology lets you explore more of your inner characteristics that are positive. And if there has to be a change in your life, it has to stem from within you. So you are exploring your positive side, your positive characteristics. So that's a start. That's a start from where you can bring yourself to a point where you're in a better position to cope with, I wouldn't say negative, but heavy emotions like grief.
Right.
So there's a whole technique to this, how this is done, how this can be done. But this is one thing that I love to use positive psychology. I love the subject.
I
So,
think what this trigger that's so interesting for me, the first thing that comes to me, well, two things. First of all, how two women from halfway around the world, have been trained to think the same way. That's fascinating to me. The other side of this is that as I've sort of sorted through the self-discovery, as an adult, as a parent, is toxic positivity. So the difference between, and you said you have to know your positive attributes in order to use them, which completely makes sense, as opposed to covering it up, pretending to yourself first that you're fine, everything is okay, because we're taught, again, not to talk about it. Nobody wants to hear it. You're a victim. And there's a way to express that at the same time that you are growing, making progress, that you're not sitting, you're not using that as an excuse to not move forward, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So true. So true. But for that, you have to, again, coming back to the point that you have to be in touch with yourself first. This is the first step. Because as human beings, I think we have been created in a way that we have all the answers. We just don't look for them.
Oh, absolutely. We don't, not taught that we have the answers. We don't raise our children.
Even when we are grieving, we look for outside support. We look for, oh, maybe she didn't come, she did come, he did come, he didn't show up. So this is what we are thinking about. That is good. That is, well, of course, human connection is a beautiful concept of the human society. I know that. But I think maybe being in touch more with your own self, recognizing your own emotions, allowing yourself to feel them. That's the first step. And similarly with grief, we don't sit with our grief. I also do meditations with the people I work with. And that is just to make them feel the pain, to make it dissolve, make it go away. I do it with them also because I feel that when someone did it with me, I felt great. The result was, well, fabulous. That was the day when I realized that, this is something very doable. Maybe everyone should do it. Connect with their own emotions. Allow yourself to feel them. Sit with them. So these are the little techniques that can, like very basic one, going back to the basics. Nothing very complex or difficult. Something that everyone can do every day. These are the techniques that I use in my work. And so far, so good.
How can people find you? I don't want to end this, but I need to. And especially because we could really go on joyfully.
You don't think I know that, Susan? I know that definitely. I know that so much. We can go on and on. We've talked about it.
This is part one, right?
Exactly.
What's the best way to get in touch with you?
People can connect me through Facebook. They can send me a DM or my Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll add those links. I'll post this. I'll add those links.
Sure.
And thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
I think about Raza, your husband's name.
Yeah. His name was Raza. Yeah.
I can't imagine what he would think of what you've done.
You're making me emotional, Susan. Yeah. This is all him. I know he's with me in spirit, always with me, behind me, beside me. I know. Yeah. This is all him. I know he's watching from somewhere over there. Yeah.
Only blessings, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. Bye. Hey friends, if this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to me if you would do two quick things. First, follow or subscribe, which hopefully helps us both. You'll never miss an episode. So wherever you listen from, click follow. And second, please share an episode with a friend. I would be so grateful.